Sukha Duneke was a young Canadian citizen of Native American descent. He was killed in Canada on August 9, 2020. Duneke was a member of the nation Haudenosaunee Confederation, a powerful alliance of several Native American tribes of North America. He belonged to the Six Nations of the Grand River First Nation in Canada, one of the most populous groups of Indigenous peoples in the country. Dunke's death was a tragic loss for the community and a reminder of the racism and hatred that still exists in many parts of the world. He was killed by a group of white supremacists in the city of Toronto, Canada, in a horrific act of hate crime. The motive behind his killing was believed to be targeting the Native American community in Canada. Toronto police have arrested 2 suspects in connection with the killing and are continuing their investigation into the events that led to Dunke's death. In response to the tragedy, Indigenous communities across the country held vigils and protests to remember the life of the young man and to show solidarity with the Native American community. Duneke is remembered by his family and friends for his big heart and determination to succeed. The loss of this young man's life has sparked a renewed commitment to combat racism and to create a more inclusive and just society. The death of Sukha Duneke is a reminder that we all must work together to ensure that these kinds of hate crimes never occur again. His death has been felt all over the country, especially among the Indigenous communities who are heartbroken by the senseless loss. In response to the tragedy, the Canadian government has taken steps to combat racism and hatred by introducing legislation that seeks to protect Indigenous peoples in the country. The death of Sukha Duneke has sparked conversations about racism and intolerance in society and has prompted many to re-examine their own attitudes and beliefs. His story has become a rallying cry for many who seek to end racism and violence in Canada and around the world. Members of the Six Nations of the Grand River First Nation have called for justice in the wake of the tragedy and for meaningful action to be taken to ensure that Native peoples are safe and respected. The fight for justice and reconciliation continues, and the memory of Sukha Duneke will live on in the hearts and minds of those who loved him. He was taken from this world too soon, but his legacy of strength, resilience, and perseverance will be remembered forever. In his honor, the Six Nations of the Grand River First Nation have created the Sukha Duneke Memorial Fund to help those in need. An online petition has been created to ensure that the perpetrators of this hate crime are brought to justice in a timely manner. The tragedy of Sukha Dunke's death has inspired people to come together and show their support for the Indigenous community. It is clear that racism and hate persist in our society, but it is also clear that people are united in their efforts to combat these issues. People are reminded that racism and violence have no place in our world, and that we must work together to ensure that everyone is safe and respected. The memory of this young man will live on in the hearts and minds of his family, friends, and all those who were touched by his story. It is our responsibility to never forget his name and to continue to work towards a more just and inclusive society.